Everyone thinks the AI revolution is about software. ChatGPT, robot, codes. It's not. The most important company in the entire AI economy doesn't write a single line of it. It sells shovels. Specifically, a chip that every AI on Earth is desperate to buy. They started by making graphics cards for gamers, and somehow that turned them into a $5 trillion empire. This is how a gaming company quietly took over the future. Let's rewind. It's April 1993. 3 engineers are sitting in a booth at a Denny's in San Jose, drinking bottomless coffee and plotting a company. Their leader is a guy named Jensen Huang, who, fun fact, used to wash dishes and clean toilets at a Denny's exactly like this one as a teenager. Now he's back. Except this time he's not scrubbing anything. He's drawing the future on a napkin. The idea was simple. Computers in 1993 were ugly. Everything was gray boxes and green text. But video games were exploding, and games needed graphics. Fast, realistic, 3-dimensional graphics. The problem? Regular computer chips were terrible at it. So Jensen and his 2 co-founders decided to build a chip that did exactly one thing: make pixels look incredible. Then they needed a name. They had hundreds of files on their computer all labeled NAV, short for next version. Someone looked up a Latin word starting with those letters and found Nvidia. It means envy, as in the green-eyed monster, as in the color green. A company named after envy that would one day make every other tech company on Earth jealous. Honestly? Nailed it. Okay, but here's the part you actually need to understand, because everything later depends on it. What does a graphics chip even do? Picture a normal computer brain, the CPU, as one genius, a Harvard professor. You give him a hard problem. He solves it brilliantly, then moves to the next one at a time. Very smart, very fast, very lonely. Now a screen is made of millions of tiny dots called pixels, and to draw a video game, you have to color every single one of them 60 times a second. Ask the genius professor to do that, and he'll have a breakdown. It's too many tiny jobs for one big brain. So Nvidia built the opposite. Instead of one genius, imagine 1,000 interns. Each one is kind of dumb. Each one can only do simple math. But there are 1,000 of them, and they all work at the exact same time. You yell, "Everyone color your dot," and boom, the whole screen lights up at once. That's a GPU, a graphics processing unit, an army of tiny workers all doing one simple thing in parallel. The professor thinks deep. The interns think wide. For making video games pretty, this was perfect. For anything else in 1993, completely useless. Nobody needed 1,000 interns. The whole world wanted the professor. Remember the interns? They're going to take over the planet. They just don't know it yet. But before the planet, Nvidia almost didn't survive its own first product. In 1995, they launched their debut chip, the NV1, and they made a confident, bold, deeply incorrect bet. They built it to draw shapes using curves, while the entire rest of the industry, led by Microsoft, decided graphics would be built out of triangles. Quick lesson: when you bet against Microsoft on how Windows works, you lose. The NV1 flopped. Stores shipped the units back. The money started running out. Nvidia shrank from over 100 employees down to about 30. They were weeks away from becoming a footnote. And this is where Jensen Huang developed the personality trait that would define the whole company: paranoia. He started opening company meetings with one sentence: "Our company is 30 days from going out of business." He said it for years. Even later, when they had billions in the bank, he'd still say it. Most CEOs motivate with vision. Jensen motivated with the cold breath of death on the back of your neck. It worked. In 1997, Nvidia bet everything on one last chip, the Riva 128. They were so broke, they couldn't afford to keep remanufacturing it until it was right. So they basically built and tested the whole thing in software first, and prayed. It worked. It sold. They lived. Then, in 1999, they released a chip called the GeForce 256, and they slapped a brand new marketing term on it, the GPU, the graphics processing unit. They didn't just make the product. They named the entire category so that forever after, every competitor would be selling a version of Nvidia's own word. That same year, they went public. Suddenly, the napkin company had real money. And for the next decade, Nvidia did what it did best, made video games gorgeous, and fought a brutal bloody war with its rival ATI over every gamer's wallet. Every year or two, one of them would launch a slightly faster card, gamers would lose their minds, the other would answer, and the cycle repeated. GeForce became a household word in every bedroom with a gaming PC. If you built a computer to play games between 2000 and 2010, there's a good chance Nvidia was the beating heart of it. Faster chips, better explosions, prettier water. The company that had nearly died was now quietly printing money, one teenager's graphics upgrade at a time. It was a good business, a normal business, but Jensen didn't want normal. He kept staring at his 1,000 interns, the army of tiny parallel workers inside every chip. And he had a thought that would sound insane to absolutely everyone. What if the interns could do something other than video games? This brings us to the most important decision in the company's history, and the one nobody clapped for. In 2006, Nvidia spent an enormous amount of money building something called CUDA. In plain English, CUDA was a set of tools that let normal programmers borrow the 1,000 interns for any kind of math, not just graphics. Want to simulate the weather, crunch a billion numbers for a science lab, train a weird experimental thing called a neural network? CUDA put the GPU to work on it. There was just one problem. In 2006, almost nobody wanted to do that. Wall Street was furious. CUDA was expensive. It made the chips bigger, hotter, and pricier, and it ate into profits. Mr. Huang, you've lit $3 billion on fire-building tools for a market that does not exist. Be real with me. Who is this for? Trust me. Trust me is not a strategy, sir. The whole board thinks you've gone full Delulu. I'm not Delulu. I'm early. There's a difference. For years, it looked like a slow-motion mistake. The stock went nowhere. People called him stubborn, a gambler, a guy in a leather jacket lighting money on fire for a future nobody else could see. Here's what he understood that they didn't. He was building a moat. Because once researchers learned CUDA, once universities taught it, once an entire generation of programmers grew up speaking Nvidia's language, they'd be trapped. Switching to a rival's chip would mean rewriting everything from scratch. Nvidia wasn't selling hardware anymore. It was quietly becoming the language smart computers think in, and slowly, in places nobody was watching, it started to work. A physics lab here, a geneticist there, academics who couldn't dream of affording a supercomputer, realized they could buy a few gaming cards, wire them together, and get supercomputer power for the price of a used car. Nvidia had accidentally democratized heavy computing, and buried in that crowd were a handful of obsessive researchers chasing an idea everyone else had written off as a dead end, teaching machines to learn on their own. And then, in 2012, the universe mailed a postcard from the future. A small group of researchers entered a famous AI contest. Basically, can a computer look at a photo and tell a cat from a dog? Everyone before them had failed miserably. This team built a neural network, trained it on a couple of Nvidia gaming cards using CUDA, and didn't just win. They humiliated everyone. It wasn't close. The AI world lost its mind because they just realized something. The thing that had been holding artificial intelligence back for 50 years wasn't bad ideas. It was the lack of those 1,000 tiny interns working in parallel. The exact thing Nvidia had been accidentally perfecting since 1993 to make aliens explode more beautifully. The shovels were ready. The gold rush just hadn't started yet. Around 2017, people figured out that those same parallel interns were also fantastic at mining cryptocurrency. Basically, doing trillions of pointless math problems to earn magic internet money. Suddenly, miners were buying every Nvidia card on Earth. Gamers walked into stores and found empty shelves. Prices tripled. Nvidia was selling chips faster than it could make them, quietly cashing crypto checks while insisting it was all about gaming. Then crypto crashed, the way crypto does, and Nvidia got burned. Warehouses stuffed with unsold cards. One genuinely brutal year. Lesson seemingly learned: don't bet the company on a hype cycle. And then came November 2022. A little tool called ChatGPT launched, and within 2 months, it was the fastest growing app in history. Overnight, every company on Earth decided it needed AI. And to build AI, you have to train it. And to train it, you need, say it with me, an enormous army of tiny parallel interns. You need GPU, Nvidia's GPU. The ones with CUDA baked in. The ones nobody else could replace. What happened next was the most insane gold rush in modern business. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, OpenAI, the richest companies on the planet, all turned around at the same moment and sprinted toward the one store that sold the one thing they suddenly couldn't live without. And that store was Nvidia. No real competitor, no substitute, just a wait list. Jensen, bestie, I need 100,000 chips by Tuesday. The wait list is 18 months. I will literally name a data center after you. I'll get the tattoo. The tattoo gets you to 120,000. 150, and I name my firstborn CUDA. Now we're talking. A single top-tier Nvidia AI chip started selling for $30,000, $40,000. And these companies weren't buying one. They were buying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Entire data centers stacked floor to ceiling with green-trimmed boxes, humming, melting electricity, printing intelligence. People stopped calling them data centers and started calling them AI factories. Buildings whose only product was raw thought, measured in megawatts. A single cutting-edge cluster could cost more than a skyscraper and drink as much power as a small town. And almost every one of them, anywhere on Earth, had Nvidia stamped somewhere inside. The company didn't just win the AI market. It became the toll booth every road to AI had to pass through. Jensen Huang, the man who'd spent his whole life 30 days from death, was now the single most important supplier in the global economy. When he walked on stage in his leather jacket, the entire stock market held its breath. CEOs flew across the world just to beg him for a bigger allocation. Countries, actual nation-states, started lobbying for the right to buy his chips, because whoever owned the most GPUs would have the most AI, and whoever had the most AI might just run the next century. The interns had grown up, and the whole world was on its knees in front of them. By 2024, Nvidia passed Apple, then Microsoft, to become the most valuable company on the planet. By 2026, it blew past $5 trillion, worth more than the entire economy of almost every country on Earth, more than nearly any company in human history has ever been worth. It controls somewhere around 90% of the chips that train serious AI. Not a lead, a near monopoly. The gaming company won, completely. But here's where the story stops being a victory lap and starts getting nervous. Because a $5 trillion valuation isn't built on what Nvidia earns today. It's built on a promise that AI will keep growing forever, that every company will keep spending hundreds of billions on chips, that the gold rush never ends. And gold rushes always end. Look closely, and the picture gets strange. Nvidia is now so rich that it started investing in the very companies that buy its chips, handing them money so they can turn around and spend it on more Nvidia chips. Some of its biggest customers don't actually make a profit yet. They're burning borrowed billions on hardware, betting it pays off someday. And if that someday doesn't come, if the AI revenue never catches up to the AI spending, the whole circle could collapse inward, and the most valuable company on Earth could discover that its customers were running on hope. Nvidia is the one quietly selling the picks and shovels to all of them, and the oldest rule of every gold rush is brutal. The people selling shovels get rich long before the miners ever strike gold, right up until the day the miners pack up and go home. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe AI really is the new electricity. Nvidia really is the company selling all the wiring, and $5 trillion is just the beginning. But it's worth remembering how we got here. A kid who cleaned tables at a Denny's sketched a chip on a napkin to make video games prettier. He bet against Microsoft and nearly died. He spent a decade building tools for customers who didn't exist, and through sheer paranoia, stubbornness, and 1,000 tiny interns, he accidentally ended up holding the keys to the most important technology of our lifetime. Nvidia never set out to rule the world. It just wanted to make aliens explode in higher resolution. The scary part? It got everything it ever wanted, and nobody, not even Jensen, is entirely sure what happens next. Then again, perhaps he is.